Macomb was an old town, but it was a tired old town when I first knew it.
Oh, yeah.
Just like that opening line.
Uh-huh.
It just, like transports you. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Harper Lee, man.
It really does.
She had a way with words, setting the scene.
Yeah.
So perfectly, right from the start of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Absolutely. It evokes such a sense of timelessness.
Right.
A place steeped in its own rhythm.
Yeah.
But also, I think it hints at a weariness, perhaps even,
Oh, for sure.
a stagnation beneath the surface.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore today, right?
Yeah.
The intricate lives of these characters set against this like backdrop of Macomb's societal dynamics.
Yes.
And hey, if you're enjoying this, deep dive into To Kill a Mockingbird, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for the Bookshelf channel for more like this.
Definitely. It's a story that reveals itself in layers, wouldn't you say?
Totally. And one of those layers is the history of the Finches. We learn about Simon Finch, arriving in Alabama filled with that like pioneer spirit, establishing Finch's Landing.
It's really interesting that Lee makes a point of mentioning that he acquired 3 slaves to help him establish the homestead.
Yeah.
Especially considering the time period the book was written in. It adds like a layer of complexity immediately to the family's legacy.
Right. And then we see that legacy play out through the generations, right? Atticus and his siblings all take these different paths.
Right.
Atticus is like the lawyer rooted in Maycomb. His brother, the doctor, seeks a life beyond the confines of their hometown.
Yeah.
And Alexandra remaining at Finch's Landing.
Right.
Almost like a guardian of their traditions.
Their diverging paths really speak volumes, I think, about the pull of family history and, the individual choices we make to either embrace it or break free from it.
Absolutely. And speaking of Atticus, I'm always fascinated by the description of his office.
Yes.
Almost Spartan, wouldn't you say?
Uh-huh.
A hat rack, a spittoon, a checkerboard, and a clean copy of the Alabama Code.
Right.
That's it.
It really speaks to his practicality.
Yeah.
His focus on the essentials.
Yeah.
A man of law and order.
Yeah.
Perhaps even suggesting a certain austerity in his character.
Totally. You get a sense of his no-nonsense approach.
Yeah.
Just from those few details. And then there's Macomb itself, right?
Yes.
The town practically breathes. In the novel, Lee describes, those red slop streets, sidewalks disappearing under encroaching grass, the stifling heat.
Right.
That seems to permeate everything.
It paints such a vivid picture, I think.
Yes.
Of a place that's both beautiful and decaying.
Yeah.
A town kind of caught between progress and a resistance to change.
Absolutely. It's like the town is a character itself.
Right.
Shaping the lives of its inhabitants.
Right.
And you think about Mr. Radley's daily walk at 11:30 a.m. It's as if the town operates on its own internal clock.
Right.
A place where routine and ritual hold sway.
Speaking of ritual and the weight of the past, let's talk about the Radley place.
Okay.
It looms large in the children's imagination.
Yes.
This source of both fear and fascination. The Radley place jutted into a sharp curve beyond our house. The house was low, was once white with a deep front porch and green shutters, but had long ago darkened to the color of the slate-gray yard around it. Rain-rotted shingles drooped over the eaves of the veranda. Oak trees kept the sun away.
Chilling, right?
Oh, yeah.
Lee really knew how to create atmosphere.
Masterful imagery, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
It sets the stage for all the mystery and the rumors that swirl around the Radleys, particularly Boo.
Oh, Boo Radley.
Yeah.
The recluse, the monster, whispered about in hushed tones. The kids, of course, are both terrified and completely intrigued by him.
Their attempts to lure him out, especially Jem's dare to touch the house.
Yes.
It speaks to that, universal childhood fascination with the forbidden, that desire to test boundaries and confront the unknown.
Definitely. It's like that pull between the safety of their world and the allure of what lies beyond.
Yeah.
And the Radley place becomes this symbolic threshold.
And then there's Scout's experience.
Oh, yeah.
With the world beyond her own doorstep, her first day of school.
Oh, what a disaster. The clash with Miss Caroline over her reading ability.
Yeah.
And then the encounter with Walter Cunningham.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
How Lee uses these seemingly simple incidents to introduce us to the social hierarchy and economic realities of Maycomb.
Totally. We learn about the Cunningham's barter system.
Right.
The impact of the Great Depression. Atticus says at one point, professional people were poor because the farmers were poor.
Right.
It really highlights how interconnected their lives are.
Yeah.
Even in their struggles.
It's a stark reminder, I think, of the economic realities of the time. And Atticus's explanation to Scout about the Cunningham's pride.
Yes.
That they won't take anything they can't pay back.
Yeah.
No church baskets and no script stamps speaks volumes.
Yes.
About their dignity and resilience.
Right. And then we have that hilarious scene with Walter pouring syrup all over his food.
Oh, yeah.
Poor Scout, so clueless about social graces. And Calpurnia steps in with that unforgettable reprimand.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
Your folks might be better than the Cunninghams, but it don't count for nothing the way you're disgracing them. If you can't act fit to eat at the table, you can just sit here and eat in the kitchen.
Calpurnia, the voice of reason, right?
Oh, yeah.
Navigating between two worlds, teaching Scout not just about manners, but about respect and empathy.
She's such a fascinating character, a moral compass for Scout in so many ways. But speaking of mystery, let's get back to those treasures the children find in the knothole of the Radley Oak.
Those gifts, the gum, the pennies, the spelling medal, the pocket watch, and those intricately carved soap dolls.
Yeah.
Like a secret language develops between the children and this unseen presence.
It's almost magical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a silent conversation across the boundaries of fear and prejudice. And Jem becomes so protective of the knothole, reluctant to reveal its secrets.
Which makes it all the more heartbreaking when Nathan Radley plugs it up, cutting off that fragile connection.
Yeah.
Jem's reaction, his devastation, speaks to, I think, the depth of his budding empathy for Boo, for the unseen and misunderstood.
It's a turning point for Jem.
Yeah.
He's starting to see the world's, harsh edges.
Yeah.
How easily kindness can be stifled.
Right.
But while all this is happening, we're also seeing Atticus through Jem's eyes.
Especially during that tense scene with the rabid dog, Tim Johnson.
Right.
Suddenly, this quiet, unassuming father is revealed to be One-Shot Finch, the deadest shot in Macomb County.
Jem is just in awe, right?
Yeah.
Realizing his father has this hidden talent, and yet he never boasts about it. Lee writes, Atticus never talked much about the shooting of Tim Johnson. In fact, I never heard him mention it at all.
Right.
It speaks volumes about Atticus's humility, right?
Absolutely. He embodies that quiet heroism, right?
Yeah.
The idea that true strength lies not in outward displays, but in doing what's right without fanfare.
And then, of course, there are those constant moral lessons he imparts to his children.
Yes.
You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it.
Right.
Powerful stuff.
It is.
But before we, get into the trial and all that, what are your thoughts on those early interactions between Scout and Atticus? How do they set the stage for the challenges to come?
Oh, those are crucial.
Yeah.
He's really laying the groundwork, for her to understand the complexities of the world beyond their home. He encourages her to question things, to see beyond the surface, and most importantly, to develop empathy for others.
Like when he tells her, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it.
Exactly.
It's a lesson that she is really going to need to draw on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? As the events of the trial unfold and the ugliness of prejudice rears its head.
Absolutely.
The trial of Tom Robinson really becomes the heart of the story.
Yeah.
Atticus, defending a black man falsely accused of assaulting a white woman, becomes a target of the town's simmering resentment and bigotry.
His decision to take on the case is an act of defiance, I think, against the prevailing social norms.
Right.
He knows he's fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And yet he refuses to compromise his principles.
It's interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some might argue that Atticus is a bit too idealistic, almost like a naive figure, in the face of such deeply ingrained prejudice. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Atticus does at times seem to cling to this belief
Yeah.
in the inherent goodness of people.
Right.
Even when confronted with like the darkest aspects of human nature. But I think that's what makes him so compelling.
Yeah.
He represents a moral compass, a beacon of hope in a world that often feels hopeless.
And in that courtroom, he dismantles the prosecution's case.
Right.
Revealing like the inconsistencies and outright lies of Bob Ewell and his daughter Mayella.
Right.
She proves Tom Robinson is innocent, but...
Right. But the jury, swayed by racial prejudice, delivers a guilty verdict. It's a crushing blow, not just for Tom Robinson and his family.
Right.
But for Jem, who's, witnessed the trial with a child's belief in fairness and justice.
His faith is shattered. Lee writes, "It was Jem's turn to cry. His face was streaked with angry tears as we made our way through the cheerful crowd.
Yeah.
'It ain't right,' he muttered, all the way to the corner of the square. It's heartbreaking to witness, isn't it?"
It certainly is. And that heartbreak, that sense of disillusionment, it really speaks to the novel's power.
Yeah.
Lee doesn't shy away from depicting, the harsh realities of racial injustice, even through the eyes of a child.
And that sense of injustice is echoed by Reverend Sykes.
Yes.
Who tells Jem, "I ain't ever seen any jury decide in favor of a colored man over a white man."
Right.
It's just this stark reminder of the systemic racism that permeated the South during that era.
And yet there's this little glimmer of hope, right? In the fact that one of the jurors,
Cunningham,
initially held out for acquittal.
Right.
It suggests that even in the face of overwhelming prejudice, there are individuals capable of seeing beyond the color of a man's skin.
It's a reminder that change is possible, even if it's incremental.
Yes.
Right? And often hard-won.
Yeah.
But the trial isn't the only event that chips away at Scout and Jem's innocence. There's also the arrival of Aunt Alexandra,
right,
who represents a very different set of values.
Aunt Alexandra, with her rigid ideas about social hierarchy and her desire to mold Scout into a proper lady, she really embodies, those stifling traditions that Atticus, in his own quiet way, is trying to challenge.
Because he is trash. That's why you can't play with him, she declares.
Right.
Forbidding Scout from befriending Walter Cunningham.
Right.
It's a stark reminder of the rigid class divisions that exist in Macomb, right?
Yes.
Divisions that often intersect with and amplify racial prejudice.
It highlights the hypocrisy at the heart of Macomb's social structure.
Yeah.
Those who claim to be upholders of morality and tradition are often the ones perpetuating systems of exclusion and inequality.
And Scout, with her innate sense of fairness and her refusal to conform to those expectations, becomes a symbol of resistance, a challenge to the status quo. But amidst all this, social commentary, there's also the unfolding mystery of Boo Radley.
Boo, the recluse, the subject of whispers and speculation, becomes almost like a mythical figure in the children's minds. And yet, Lee slowly peels back the layers of that myth, revealing the human being beneath.
Like those gifts in the knothole, those small acts of kindness that speak volumes about his hidden compassion.
Right.
And then, of course, the fire at Miss Maudie's house.
Yeah.
Where Boo silently drapes a blanket over Scout's shoulders while they watch from the Radley porch.
Those subtle gestures are so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Aren't they? They challenge the reader to question their assumptions about this monster figure.
Yeah.
To recognize the potential for goodness, even in those who are ostracized and misunderstood.
And then, of course, the climax of the story.
Yes.
The attack on Jem and Scout as they walk home from the Halloween pageant.
Right.
It's like a moment of terror, of vulnerability, where the shadows of Maycomb seem to take on a menacing life of their own.
And it's in that moment of darkness that Boo emerges, becoming a literal savior for the children, protecting them from Bob Ewell's drunken rage.
The monster everyone feared turns out to be their protector.
Such a powerful reversal, right?
Yes, it is.
It really forces the reader to confront their own prejudices and to recognize the true nature of courage and heroism. It's a pivotal moment that brings, I think, the themes of the novel into really sharp focus. The real monsters aren't the ones lurking in the shadows, but those who walk among us, perpetuating systems of injustice and hiding behind these masks of respectability.
And Scout, in her childlike wisdom, comes to understand this. She says, Atticus was right. One time he said, you never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around in them.
Right.
Just standing on the Radley porch was enough. Such a simple observation.
Yeah.
But it's so weighted, I think, with meaning.
Absolutely.
It suggests a shift in her understanding.
Yes.
A new awareness of the interconnectedness of lives and the complexities of the world around her. She's stepping into a more mature understanding of Maycomb and its inhabitants.
Yeah.
But what about Jem? How does the attack and his encounter with Boo impact him?
Yeah.
He seems to grapple with those events on a deeper level, doesn't he?
He does. You're right. Jem's reaction to the attack and his encounter with Boo is more internalized.
Okay.
Remember, he's older than Scout.
Right.
Grappling with those, adolescent shifts in perception and understanding. He's also physically wounded.
Right.
Which, adds another layer to his processing of the trauma.
So he's not as outwardly expressive as Scout.
Right.
So his journey is more subtle, more introspective.
Precisely. But Lee gives us these glimpses into his struggle.
Okay.
He's deeply disturbed by the injustice of the trial.
Yeah.
And then the attack, shakes his sense of safety and order.
Right.
Seeing Boo, this figure of fear and mystery, emerge as their protector forces him to confront the contradictions of the adult world.
And how does that tie into the broader themes of the novel?
I think Jem's journey really embodies the complexities of growing up.
Okay.
Of, losing that childhood innocence and coming to terms with the imperfections of the world. He sees the hypocrisy, the prejudice, the violence.
Yeah.
And it forces him to reconcile those realities with, the moral code Atticus has instilled in him.
It's like he's wrestling with the question of how to hold on to his sense of justice and compassion in a world that often seems devoid of both.
Exactly. And that struggle and internal conflict is something that I think a lot of readers, especially, young adults, can really relate to. It's that process of figuring out who you are and what you believe in when the world around you challenges those beliefs.
And Boo becomes this catalyst for both Scout and Jem's growth, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
He represents the other, the misunderstood, the one society is deemed, unworthy or dangerous.
Absolutely. He embodies the novel's central message of empathy.
Yeah.
The idea that we must challenge our preconceived notions and strive to see the world through the eyes of others.
And that brings us back to the symbol of the mockingbird.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Atticus tells Scout, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird.
The mockingbird, with its beautiful song, its innocence, represents those who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Those who are harmed by prejudice and ignorance.
Yeah.
Tom Robinson is a mockingbird. So is Boo Radley. They are both victims of a society that judges and condemns without truly understanding.
It's such a powerful metaphor.
It is.
And it really elevates the story beyond just a courtroom drama or a coming-of-age tale.
Yeah.
It speaks to something deeper, something universal about the human condition.
And it's a message that sadly remains relevant even today.
Right.
We continue to see examples of how prejudice, fear, and ignorance lead to the persecution of the innocent.
Yeah.
The silencing of dissenting voices, the killing of mockingbirds in various forms.
It's a reminder that we must constantly be vigilant. Yeah. Right. We must challenge those forces that seek to divide us.
Yeah.
And to dehumanize those who are different.
Yeah.
But there's also hope in the novel, isn't there?
I think so.
Hope for change, for understanding, for a future where mockingbirds can sing freely.
I believe so. That hope is embodied in Scout and Jem in their journey of growth and their embrace of empathy. It's also present in characters like Miss Maudie.
Oh, yeah.
Who represents a kind of quiet resistance to Macomb's stifling norms.
Sometimes the Bible in the hand of one man is worse than a whiskey bottle in the hand of your father.
Yes.
I love that line.
Such a good line.
She's not afraid to challenge hypocrisy, even when it comes from the church.
Exactly. She's a voice of reason.
Yeah.
A reminder that true goodness lies not in like blind adherence to tradition, but in the courage to question and to stand up for what's right.
And even in the face of tragedy, like the death of Tom Robinson, there's that small glimmer of hope in the fact that a Cunningham juror held out for acquittal.
It suggests a crack in the edifice of prejudice, right? A sign that hearts can be changed, even if slowly and with great difficulty.
And what about Boo?
Yeah.
At the end, he retreats back into the shadows. But is his story a tragic one?
That's a question that's like open to interpretation. Some might see it as a tragedy, a reminder that society often fails to protect its most vulnerable members. But I think there's also a sense of peace in his retreat. You know, he's done what he needed to do. He's protected the children. And now he can return to his sanctuary.
It's like he's found a way to exist on his own terms outside the judgment and scrutiny of a world that doesn't understand him.
And perhaps that's the ultimate lesson of To Kill a Mockingbird. The importance of understanding and acceptance, of recognizing the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of their differences.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel that offers so much richness, so much complexity, and it continues to spark conversations and challenge readers generations after its publication.
It's a story that stays with you. Prompts you to reflect on your own beliefs and biases. And to strive to live a life guided by empathy and compassion.
And if you're looking for more insightful discussions about literature and the human condition, be sure to subscribe to the Bookshelf channel. We've got tons of great episodes coming up.
We do.
That will feed your curiosity and spark your imagination.
Until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and keep those conversations going.
See you next time.
Those early conversations, they're so crucial, you know. He's like laying the groundwork for her to really grasp those complexities of the world that exists outside of their home. He encourages her to question things, to see beyond the surface, and most importantly, you know, that empathy for others.
Like when he says, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it.
Exactly. It's a lesson I think she's really going to need to rely on. As those events of the trial unfold. And like you said, the ugliness of prejudice just rears its head.
Right, because the trial of Tom Robinson really becomes like the heart of the story, you know.
It does.
Atticus defending a black man falsely accused of assaulting a white woman. He becomes like this target.
He does.
Of the town's simmering resentment and bigotry.
His decision to even take on this case is an act of defiance, I think, against those prevailing social norms, you know. He knows he's fighting an uphill battle. But he refuses to compromise his principles.
It's interesting, though, right? Like, some might argue that Atticus is a bit too idealistic, almost a naive figure. In the face of such, you know, deeply ingrained prejudice. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a valid point. Atticus does, at times, seem to cling to a belief in the inherent goodness of people, even when confronted with the darkest aspects of human nature. But I think that's what makes him so compelling. You know, he represents this moral compass, that beacon of hope in a world that often feels hopeless.
And in that courtroom, he dismantles the prosecution's case. He's revealing, like, the inconsistencies, the outright lies of Bob Ewell and his daughter Mayella. He proves Tom Robinson's innocent. But
but the jury, swayed by racial prejudice, delivers a guilty verdict.
And it's like crushing,
It is.
Not just for Tom Robinson and his family, but for Jem.
Especially Jem.
Who has, like, witnessed this whole trial with a child's belief in, like, fairness and justice.
It shatters his faith.
His faith is shattered. It was Jem's turn to cry. His face was streaked with angry tears as we made our way through the cheerful crowd. It ain't right, he muttered, all the way to the corner of the square.
It's just heartbreaking to witness.
It really is, and I think that heartbreak, that sense of disillusionment, really speaks to the novel's power, you know? Lee doesn't shy away from depicting those harsh realities of racial injustice. Even through the eyes of a child.
And that sense of injustice is, like, echoed by Reverend Sykes. Who tells Jem, I ain't ever seen any jury decide in favor of a colored man over a white man.
Right.
It's just this like stark reminder.
It is.
Of the systemic racism.
Yeah, that permeated the South during that era.
Yeah. And yet there's this like little glimmer of hope, right?
Yes.
In the fact that one of the jurors, a Cunningham, initially held out for acquittal. It suggests that even in the face of this overwhelming prejudice, there are individuals
capable of seeing beyond the color of a man's skin.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that change is possible, even if it's incremental and often hard-won. But the trial isn't the only event that chips away at Scout and Jem's innocence.
Right.
There's also the arrival of Aunt Alexandra, who like represents a very different set of values.
Aunt Alexandra, with her like rigid ideas about social hierarchy, and this desire to mold Scout into a proper lady, really embodies those stifling traditions that Atticus, in his own quiet way, is trying to challenge.
Because he is trash, that's why you can't play with him, she declares, you know, forbidding Scout from befriending Walter Cunningham.
Right, and it's this stark reminder of the like rigid class divisions that exist in Maycomb.
Right, and divisions that often intersect with and amplify racial prejudice.
It highlights the hypocrisy, right? At the heart of Macomb's social structure, those who claim to be these upholders of morality and tradition are often the ones who are actually perpetuating these systems of exclusion and inequality.
And Scout, with her like innate sense of fairness and her refusal to, you know, conform to those expectations, becomes a symbol of resistance, a challenge to the status quo. But amidst all of this, like social commentary, there's also this unfolding mystery of Boo Radley.
Boo, the recluse, the subject of whispers and speculation, becomes almost like a mythical figure in the children's minds, right?
Yeah.
And yet Lee so masterfully peels back those layers of that myth to reveal the human being beneath.
Like those gifts in the knothole. Right. These small acts of kindness that speak volumes about his like hidden compassion.
Right.
And then there's, of course, the fire at Miss Maudie's house, where Boo silently drapes a blanket over Scout's shoulders while they watch from the Radley porch.
Those subtle gestures, they're so powerful, right?
Oh, they are.
They challenge us as readers to question our assumptions about this figure, this monster figure, to recognize, you know, that potential for good, even in those who are ostracized and misunderstood.
And then, of course, the climax of the story, the attack on Jem and Scout as they walk home from the Halloween pageant.
Right.
Like, it's just this moment of terror, of vulnerability, where like the shadows of Macomb seem to just like take on this menacing life of their own.
And in that moment of darkness, Boo emerges. You know, he becomes a literal savior for those children, protecting them from Bob Yule's drunken rage.
This monster that everyone feared, turns out to be their protector. It's such a powerful reversal.
It really is.
You know, it forces us as readers to confront our own prejudices, and to recognize the true nature of courage and heroism.
It's such a pivotal moment, I think, that brings the themes of the novel into such sharp focus. The real monsters aren't the ones lurking in the shadows, but those who walk among us, you know, perpetuating those systems of injustice and hiding behind those masks of respectability.
And Scout, you know, in her childlike wisdom, comes to understand this. She says, Atticus was right. One time he said, you never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around in them. Just standing on the Radley porch was enough. It's such a simple observation, but it's so weighted, I think, with meaning.
It really is.
It suggests this shift in her understanding. Right? This new awareness of the interconnectedness of lives, the complexities of the world around her. She's stepping into this like more mature understanding of Maycomb and its inhabitants. But what about Jem? How does the attack and his encounter with Boo impact him? He seems to like grapple with those events on a deeper level, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He grapples with it more internally, wouldn't you say? It's not as outward. He's older than Scout, remember? Right. And he's grappling with those, like, you know, adolescent shifts in perception and understanding. And on top of all that, he's physically wounded too. So that adds another layer, I think, to his processing of that trauma.
So he's not as, like, outwardly expressive as Scout?
No.
So his journey is more subtle.
Right, more introspective.
More introspective.
But we get these glimpses, into his struggle. He's so disturbed by, like, the injustice of the trial. And then the attack, that really shakes his sense of safety and order.
Right.
And then to see Boo, this figure of fear and mystery, emerge as their protector.
Right.
It really forces him to confront those contradictions of the adult world.
Yeah. So how does that tie into those broader themes of the novel?
I think Jem's journey really embodies the complexities of growing up.
Right.
Losing that childhood innocence and coming to terms with the imperfections of the world.
Right.
He sees the hypocrisy, the prejudice, the violence, and he's forced to kind of reconcile those realities with the moral code that Atticus has instilled in him.
It's like he's wrestling with that question, right?
Yeah.
Of how to hold on to your sense of justice and compassion in a world that often feels devoid of both.
Exactly. And I think that struggle, that internal conflict, that's something a lot of readers can relate to,
right?
Especially young adults. It's that process of figuring out who you are and what you believe in when the world around you challenges those beliefs.
And Boo becomes this catalyst,
Coldplay,
right, for both Scout and Jem's growth.
He does.
He represents the other,
the
misunderstood, the one society has deemed unworthy or dangerous.
Absolutely. He embodies that central message, of
empathy. The idea that we have to challenge our preconceived notions and strive to see the world through the eyes of others.
Which brings us back to that symbol of the mockingbird.
Yes.
Atticus tells Scout it's a sin to kill a mockingbird.
Such a powerful line. That mockingbird with its beautiful song, its innocence, represents those who are vulnerable, those who are harmed by prejudice and ignorance. Tom Robinson is a mockingbird.
Right.
So is Boo Radley. They're both victims of a society that judges and condemns without truly understanding.
It's such a powerful metaphor. It elevates the story beyond just like a courtroom drama or a coming-of-age tale.
It does.
It speaks to something, I think, much deeper, something universal about the human condition.
It's a message, too, that sadly remains so relevant.
Oh, for sure.
Even today, right? We still see examples of how prejudice, fear, and ignorance lead to the persecution of the innocent, the silencing of dissenting voices, the killing of mockingbirds in various forms.
It's that reminder that we have to constantly be vigilant, right?
Yeah.
That we must challenge those forces that seek to divide us and to dehumanize those who are different.
And yet, there's hope, too, in the novel.
Oh, yeah.
Hope for change, for understanding, for a future where those mockingbirds can sing freely.
I think that hope is embodied in Scout and Jem, right?
Totally.
In their journey of growth and their embrace of empathy.
And also in characters like Miss Maudie.
Oh, yeah.
Who represents, I think, that quiet resistance to Macomb's, stifling norms.
Sometimes the Bible in the hand of one man is worse than a whiskey bottle in the hand of your father.
Oh, I love that line.
Right. It's so good. She's not afraid to challenge hypocrisy.
No.
Even when it's coming from the church.
She's a voice of reason.
Yeah.
Right. A reminder that true goodness lies not in, blind adherence to tradition,
but in the courage to question and stand up for what's right.
And even in the face of tragedy, like the death of Tom Robinson.
Yeah.
There's that small glimmer of hope in the fact that a Cunningham juror held out for acquittal.
It suggests a crack in that edifice of prejudice.
Yeah.
Right? A sign that hearts can change, even if slowly and with great difficulty.
So what about Boo?
Yeah.
At the end, he retreats back into the shadows.
He does.
But is his story a tragic one?
That's a question that's open to interpretation, I think.
Right.
Some might see it as a tragedy. Society has failed to protect its most vulnerable members. But I also think there's a sense of peace in his retreat.
Okay.
He did what he needed to do. Right? He protected the children.
Yeah.
And now he can return to his sanctuary.
It's like he's found a way to exist on his own terms outside the judgment and scrutiny of a world that doesn't understand him.
And maybe that's the ultimate lesson of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
The importance of understanding and of recognizing that inherent worth of every individual.
Right.
Regardless of their differences.
Well, we covered a lot of ground today. To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel that just offers so much.
So much.
So much richness, complexity.
Yeah.
And continues to just spark conversation and challenge readers generations after its publication.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us today. You know, if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to continue to explore the power of literature, make sure you hit that subscribe button for the Bookshelf channel.
Yes.
You know, we've got more insightful discussions about literature.
We do.
And, you know, all those deep questions about the human condition.
Yeah, until next time.
Until next time.
Keep reading, keep exploring, and keep those conversations going.
And we'll see you on the next episode of the Bookshelf channel.